Welcome back to my channel, fellow gardeners. We've just done a morning walk because I want to talk about the walking iris and show you how to propagate this particular one. Now, the thing is that in the past we have done a walking iris, but a different one. So this time I want to show you this walking iris, but unfortunately in the morning they sleep, and by midday they will open up their flower. So my name is Alice and I'm the red soil gardener. So let's go and propagate this lovely walking iris. There's over 250 species of irises, and we've covered some in the Red Soil Gardener. We've done the big giant iris with its big blooms, and also we've done another walking iris, which I have in my garden, but as it walks is very different from this particular walking iris. Now, all irises always come up as a fan, as a flat fan, and they have these sword-like leaves that go up. Now, basically, an iris does have a rhizome, and that's where it stores its food and its nutrients in order to service the plant. Now, the thing about this particular iris is that, first of all, it doesn't take much. It's a very low maintenance. It actually flowers all the time once the blooms do come up. And as I mentioned, during the day, the blooms come up when the sun comes up and they open out. And during the evenings, they sleep, so they curl. But the flowers only last for one day. Now, the thing about irises is that this particular one with the flower, which we'll show you, is they have different names. So we call it, you can either call it the fan iris, or you call it the apostle iris, meaning that you get 12 leaves and then you'll get your bloom, and that's why they call it the apostle plant. And basically they call it the hand of God, because in the flower you get 3 petals, and so they say the Father, the Son and the Holy Ghost, so they call it the hand of God. But all I know is we will put its species name below so you don't get confused. But basically all irises are the same, and walking irises, I will explain why they call it that way. Now, the thing about irises is that some of the irises you can actually propagate from division and or from the seed. But this particular iris, why they call it the walking iris, is because basically is that as it flowers here, and you see the flower stalk, these are the flower stalks, it flowers at the end similar to this. Now, the other thing about irises is that it's actually run by a rhizome, as I mentioned earlier. So what happens with the rhizome is, as we know, it's actually where the food and the nutrients are stored. So it's actually, when you do have to do a propagation by division, always ensure that you do actually have a rhizome with a bit of the roots, and then you're good to go. Now, the thing is that what is the requirement in terms of light? So basically, what sort of requirement does it need for light? So we're talking about semi-shade. They can actually do well, but they can actually do well in full sun. And what I have at the back there, where I have all my irises, is it doesn't get the morning sun, but it does get sort of filtered sun in the afternoon, and it actually flowers. And I have another one here, which actually is situated in full sun. They're not really fussy. Now, what sort of soil does it like? Basically, it does like a well-drained soil or moist soil, but they are very drought resistant, so I wouldn't be so bothered about too much where you're planting it in terms of soil, but it would be actually good for the iris if you had a well-draining soil. Now, the thing about irises is that what about water? Now, as I mentioned earlier, because it does have a rhizome, is that's where it stores all its nutrients and stores its food. But basically, you can water and keep the soil moist. However, it is quite drought resistant. So even if you do go through a situation that you're not watering it that often, the iris will survive. Now what happens is that as the iris grows its stem, as it flowers, and you get this flower stalk, which we mentioned earlier. Now once it does finish its function, if you do want to remove it, do go right down to the base stem and cut it there, similar to this. I'll show you. So this is the flower stem, and if the iris is in your garden or in a pot, I would actually go right down to the base here, right down to the base, and then remove that flower stem, just like that. Now once you've removed your flower stem, do hang on to it, because with this flower stem is that basically you can carry out a propagation. So I'm going to put that aside. Now there's another flower stem, and I think we can use this. So again, right down to the base and snip it off, just there. And then again, as I mentioned, is that we can try to propagate this. Now the thing is that as you go into autumn and you start making your overwinter preparations, and you've got your irises there, what I would actually do is cut it completely down to base, and then leave it there, maybe put some sort of insulating hay or whatever on top of it, but then in the spring it will revive itself and come up. So with the overwinter storage, unless, depending on where your location is that basically I would actually take down the foliage and then let the iris still stay in the ground, cover it with some sort of insulating, as I mentioned, hay. You could actually use other sort of compost or something just to keep the roots warm. So now I will put on my gloves and let's look at a propagation here and see what you can do with your walking iris. So again, as I mentioned, is that with the walking iris, or with irises, you get the fan and then you get the rhizins, but then what happens from the rhizin is you get offshoots like this particular one. So for propagation purposes, if you want to use the offshoot, I would just take my scissor, ensure that you have the rhizin, and that's what you can actually propagate. You have your rhizin there, you have your roots here, and the plant will take off. So let me put that one here. Now, what I wanted to show you is I had gone into my plant yesterday and I actually was looking for the flower stems. So I'm going to actually put all these flower stems here. I ended up with quite a few flower stems. So what I'm going to do with these flower stems is I'm just going to snip it like that, cut it, one. And then what I would, they're everywhere. And this one is actually forming another flower stem, but at the moment we're not going to propagate that. So I would go right down to base and remove it. Again, we have a few flower heads here, and I'm just going to go down to base and remove it because we're more interested. I'm more interested in this one, this plantlet, and I don't want to have other little sort of flower heads jutting out and giving too much energy to that. So let me just go through this and remove all what I need. Got that one, got this one, remove this one here, that flowers, and just remove that leaf. And then cut this one here, just like that. So I have 1, 2. I could separate this, but I can leave it together. Let's get, and I'm going to remove this one and remove that there. Could use that one. cut this one there. So all these plantlets will propagate and form its own rhizome, and then they become independent. Now, as I mentioned with these walking irises, so how do they manage? So as the plantlet comes, as the stem, flower stem, is on the plant, as it gets heavy, it does drop, a drop like that, and then it starts rooting, and then forms its own little colony here. And then the colony will grow again, the flower, and it drops. And then you get another colony. That's why they call it the walking iris. But it has a different technique than the other iris, which I will actually put below, because that one is much easier. It just flops down and then starts walking. So that is the way they walk. So with this one, I think I'll leave that one. And so out of that one plant that we have there, I've managed to get quite a few plantlets. So all I do here is, we'll start off with this one, is I'm just going to take them and in the soil, this is moist soil. I prepared it yesterday evening. I'm just going to take it and put it in soil and make sure it's in there. And that's what you do. So you just take one by one and just submerge it in the soil like that. Make sure it's in. Now I'm using my recycled vegetable container plastic, which I've started doing because, and what I've done at the bottom of it, at the base, is I've actually put holes in it so it's well draining. So that is what you do, and you can cover all these ones and do the same process, putting them in the soil, and you wait. Now, my propagation here, which I did, is maybe about 1 month old, maybe, yeah, about 6 weeks to 1 month old. And so basically they do root. So let me just remove my gloves. Now, if I pull this one out, look at that. This particular bunch here, I did exactly like what I did there. And once they do grow, look at that. And once it does sort of mature, it'll form its own rhizome and it will survive. I'll just take one more out. Just try to tug it. Here we go. All the babies are rooting. Look at that. So basically, a very simple propagation. As we mentioned, you can go for the offsets which are attached to the mother, or you can just go for these little plantlets, and you get so many. And out of that, you can actually do your whole garden. Now, the beauty about this plant is especially if you can actually plant it en masse, for example, under a tree, and just have all your walking irises underneath. And as they flower yellow, they'll look very dramatic. You can actually use them in containers and just have that fan and mix it up with some other plants. Or even if you have a bog garden where you have water, you can actually plant this plant because it does have an aquatic nature and it would look very dramatic. So thank you so much, fellow gardeners. Do go and you get yourself some lovely walking iris and do propagate it. So don't waste it, because there's so much in the plant or in the flowers that produces all these babe plantlets, and you can actually do your planting en masse effortlessly. So thank you so much, and don't forget to like and share and press that notification button. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. And we're on Instagram, Facebook. Do send your comments, and also do send your comments through my YouTube channel. I always do answer. And if you do have a question, do put it down. And I do always try to help you. So thank you so much, and have a lovely, lovely day, and happy gardening.